episode of Beating Alpha. This is episode 113, and we have two special guests, as you will see here in a few seconds. So I want to introduce you to Russ Morgan and Joey Mure. So a little bit about Russ. He's AKA, first of all, the idea guy. Started his career in the financial industry with 4 years of planning under his belt. Russ was stunned in September of 2008 to see the Dow Jones plummet 800 points. He had no idea that the market could reach in such a volatile manner and knew this was something he could never have control over. So he began his journey that day to passionately understand more how to take back, gain control over his money as well as his clients. So again, the rest of the bio of the Russ is going to be included in the show notes, so make sure to read through. So a little bit about Joey. He's the Stallion, aka the Stallion. Started his career in the mortgage business in 2003. He grew to become the branch manager with one of the nation's top mortgage lenders, leading 25 loan officers. By 2010, he has achieved national recognition. Despite earnings and impressive income, he still had significant questions about how to save for the future without having to borrow from banks. So make sure again to go and read through Joey's bio as well. And guys, happy to have you on the show. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Martinez. Thank you for having me.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure of mine. So first of all, I love the name Wealth Without Wall Street. And again, you can check it out, their personal website. That's the way it's called, the Wealth Without Wall Street. You're going to find a lot of great, valuable tools, information. I mean, there's a lot. So hopefully we can cover as much as we can today on the show. So first of all, again, a little bit of both background. So maybe Russ, you can expand a little bit on like, what is the background? Like, what are the things that you're currently working on?
Yeah, so you said some stuff in that bio. Basically, I was like every college roommate you ever had that decided to get in the financial industry with no experience and no understanding of how money works. I just liked it. I wanted more of it. So I thought, man, become a financial advisor 4 years after college. That's the ticket. That's the way to understand money. And in 2006, I became a financial expert. 2008, I realized I was a complete moron like most people in the market. I didn't know what was going on, why the market went up and why it was going down like a rock, right? But that put me back into the position of being humble and looking toward what sort of things could I do to help not only myself, but then ultimately help my clients create freedom, right? Because really, I mean, in the financial world, what people are after is freedom. I mean, we go to work to make incomes, but we do it really for the purpose of getting stuff from the money. And people save money or do investing or whatever it is for the purpose of what that money will do. And really quickly, I started looking around and I realized the most successful clients I had, the most happy clients I had were those who worked because they wanted to and not because they had to. And the things that they were doing with me up to that point of investing in the typical financial places like 401ks, IRAs, that kind of stuff, it was really just a side hobby. But they were investing in real estate, they were owning businesses, both passively and actively, and creating cash flow. And what I learned is that you got to be in control of your money in order to make those things happen. And once you get in control and you get money coming to you instead of away from you, then you can do pretty much anything you wanted. And that's how I got to meet Joey. And ultimately, I'll let you hear from him of kind of how our business got created.
Sure.
Yeah. So I actually met Russ back in 2009 or 10. And actually, we were friends before that at church. And he said, man, I want to start sending you mortgage clients. But in order for me to do that, you have to read this book. And he handed me this book. And he said, by the way, it's $20. And I'm like, wait a minute, you just asked me to read a book and you're charging me for it? Like, that's kind of low down, man. I didn't say that. I was thinking it.
Martinez, that's what you call a good business guy. He's never going to waste money on somebody who doesn't know if he's going to, I'm going to get my money back.
But little did I know, the book was called Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. I read it, and it was really, Martinez, it was like a turning point in my life to start seeing money differently. It was an answer to the question I'd risen very quickly in the mortgage business to making well over $300,000 a year. And I looked up and I said, wait a minute, I would have thought I would have been farther along financially if I was making this kind of income. It's kind of like things weren't adding up. And I said, man, there's got to be another way. There's got to be some way to gain more of my time back, because I was slipping further and further away from my family. The higher my income went, the more I was tied to my phone when we were on vacation. I really didn't have any off time. And my wife, whenever actually I started implementing these things with Russ over 4 years, I got so compelled. I went home. I told my wife, I said, I really feel like I'm supposed to go out and start this business from scratch with Russ. And she took one look at me, pregnant with our 4th daughter, and she said, I think you should do it. And I said, whoa, okay, there's something to this. She's willing to give up this kind of comfort level that we've created with this lifestyle and income, that she sees the opportunity. And she knew had changed so much because I was basically being imprisoned at the place that was giving me all this money. So anyways, that was 2014. Russ and I then just started to expand what we've done together and for many of his clients, and created the brand Wealth Without Wall Street, which just is a better way to create the cash flows and the freedom that people are looking for.
Got it. Well, it does make sense. And again, your wife, I mean, you know, she's a hero again in this, like she takes a big part in the business, you know, like for somebody to say
absolutely
that in that situation, I mean, she saw something. And of course, you know, like, so you created the business and everything turned out to be the way it's supposed to be. So look, let's dive in on something, because I just, I'm looking at it, and it's very tempting because of a few reasons. First of all, there's a word certainty, which there's a lack of it right now during these times, and financial future. So, and you kind of talk about these 5 pillars of building wealth without Wall Street. So can you cover that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. So thinking about, everybody has to start with clarity, right? In what they want to have happen. This is what we find is people have the hardest time doing. When someone joins our community, we say the very first thing is, what would you be doing and where would you be if you were financially free? And another way of saying that is, if money wasn't an option or a hurdle, if you obstacle, what would you be doing? And I feel like people have never allowed themselves to go there. It's kind of like this thing that they just can't get their arms around. They've never given themselves the license to dream at that level. But if we can be clear on that, then and only then do we have a true kind of a formula to follow. Because then we can say the vehicles that we use to get there either make sense because they uplift that goal and that what we're trying to accomplish, or they go against it, if that makes sense. And so that's when we start applying the 5 pillars of Wealth Without Wall Street. So the very first one is cash flow, right? If I want to be financially free before I'm 60 years old, or 59 and a half is what most qualified plans like 401ks and IRAs kind of rubber stamp your freedom date is after 59 and a half. If we want to be free before then, we have to get our cash flows working for us, not against us. So like kind of what Russ alluded to earlier, we start thinking about debt differently. How can I pay off my debt, but in the smartest way possible? And what debts do I need to prioritize? So we actually have a course that helps walk you through how to do that. What about tax hacks? Like, what kind of things can I do to get more of my money, to save more of my money that would normally be going to Uncle Sam, right? So we have courses on that. What about how I pay off my mortgage? That's obviously a debt, but it's one of those things that we've just been, unfortunately, been thinking about differently. We've been trained to think about our mortgages in a way that really doesn't help us. And then finally, we also think about should we be giving money to qualified plans like 401ks and IRAs? Well, if we want freedom today, those things fly in the face of freedom. In fact, Russ has been quoted before as saying, people say, well, what about the free, the match that you get with a 401k? You're just going to give up that free money like that? And Russ has said very clearly, he's like, you can't pay me enough to give up freedom. If I want freedom today, your match is inconsequential to my freedom. So anyways, I don't know if that helps anybody, but from that point, so that's under the cash flow piece. We go to the second pillar, if you will, and that would be under this concept of infinite banking. Remember, I told you about the book, Become Your Own Banker. This is the place where we take that cash flow we just created in the first step and we start saving it in the most efficient means possible. These are high cash value life insurance policies that are designed to grow wealth over a long period of time and to supercharge your investments, so that then we can go to the last three pillars. And those are going to be the things that Russ mentioned before: businesses, real estate, and lending. And under each one of those three pillars, those last three, you're going to have obviously an enormous variety. So from businesses, you can own a percentage of somebody else's, you can own one actively, you can create a passive business. Under real estate, you get into land flipping, you get into short-term rentals, long-term rentals, multifamily syndications, all those things. And then in lending, you have a numerous variety as well. But that's kind of to sum up the 5 pillars.
Got it. Got it. And again, one of the things when you kind of decide where to invest, and again, one of the first pillar, as I mentioned, is the cash flow, which is good. You probably get a lot of people that coming in and saying, I'm making $1 million on paper, but actually it's $500 or $500,000 or less in the pocket. So, because I know you have some really great tax strategies, so maybe you can share a few tips with the people also.
Yeah, well, I'll put the disclaimer. Joey and I are not attorneys nor CPAs. Okay, so any advice, go check your own accountants and tax professionals for this. But I'll just give you what I do personally, right? Because here's the thing, Martinez, is that when I was making a really good living doing what I was doing before, when I was separating people from their money. I mean, being a financial advisor, and I learned that I just paid whatever the accountant told me that I had to pay. And then, I started looking through what were some of my most successful clients doing with money. I started asking questions, and they said, well, I'm working with actual tax attorney, and they're helping me strategize ways to pay less in taxes. And I was like, yes, please sign me up. Where do I go? And that led Joey and I on a road trip. We spent a couple of days with a couple of tax attorneys, and learned a couple of things that we could do differently. Now, I could spend all day talking about things that we do, but here's one. Here's a fun one. If you're a business owner, there is a law within the tax code, which most people, by the way, if you know the tax code, it's like 10,000 pages. The first 7 pages roughly describe income. The other 9,993 pages describes exceptions to the rule. And it's the people that you want to be working with are looking at the exceptions to the rule and not the first 7 pages. And that's typically what our accountants do, right? They literally just tell us how much we owe. And some of my best friends are accountants, and they would agree with everything I'm saying. Tax attorneys and tax strategists are looking at those 9,993 pages and trying to find ways that we can legally not pay taxes. And I think, by the way, as business owners, one of the things, the best things we can do is pay as few taxes as possible. And people go, well, how are you helping people with that? I'm like, well, because I'm creating jobs. Every new business I start, I hire 1 to 3 people, and those jobs are what we're really doing to help people, right? Taxes is not a benefit. So I'm going to pay as little as I possibly can. If you go back to our founding fathers, you can actually find them being quoted as saying that, is that we should be paying as little as possible. Well,
right, but give us an actual strategy.
Here's a fun one. Here's one of those things that is little known. Dwight Eisenhower, when he was president, was lobbied by some of his rich friends who lived over in Augusta, Georgia. I don't know if you're a golf guy, Martinez, or not, but there's a pretty fancy golf course over there, Augusta National. They play a pretty prominent tournament every year called the Masters. And next to that golf course, as you might imagine, has limited tickets to get in. And so the places, and because it's in the middle of nowhere, it's not like in Los Angeles, not in New York City, it doesn't have tons of places for people to go stay. So people can rent, people would rent out their house for the week of the Masters. But one of the things that they wanted to avoid was having to pay income tax on that money. So they lobbied their buddy, Dwight Eisenhower, and he put a law in that says any money that you receive for 7 days for renting out your house, as long as it's less than 7 days, you don't have to pay income tax on it. Well, several decades later, that law was expanded to 14 days. And some people who's in the real estate game have figured that out. And they go, oh, I can rent out my house in a short-term rental on Airbnb as long as I don't go over 14 days. I don't have to pay income tax on it. Well, here's a little known thing that people don't realize is that that rule applies to your house as a place that you can do business. So Joey and I, for instance, whenever we bring our team for a retreat, we'll go down to my lake house and take our team down there. We'll have a team meeting and then just an enjoyment. Well, if I went to the Holiday Inn, the Marriott, and I rented out the conference center for us to have our meeting and then use the facilities, the spa and the pool and all of that area, that's an expense for my business, right? You follow me? And that expense would be probably $3,000 or $4,000, depending on the area that you're in. Now, my house, would you believe that my bathroom's a little bit nicer than the ones at the Marriott? A little more private. And by the way, the pool at my house would only have us involved in it and not potentially by, other people that we don't know. So I actually get my house appraised commercially and compare square footage to what if I rented out a conference center at the local venue down the road, and my business can expense that. And the same rule applies. If I don't rent my house out more than 14 days, then that's called a dwelling unit rental. Then my business gets the expense and I don't have to pick up the income. So when you do that, 14 days for every residence that you have that has an eating facility, cooking facility, and bathroom in it, you can move between $40,000 and $80,000 out of your business into your pocket, income tax free. And that's about a $20,000 to $30,000 benefit to me every single year by just following that simple rule that exists in those 9,993 pages.
Got it. And I mean, it's a great strategy. Well, it sounds great, but I think the first problem for the people who are listening, how do I get the lake house?
Well, here's the thing is that you don't have to have the lake house, right? Now, I can tell you how to get the lake house. I've got a great video on a 401 lake house versus a 401k, and that's a great subject matter. But you can do this for your primary house. It's for any house. I have people who own RVs and they use their RV. Anytime you have, again, there's some rules in there. So don't just go willy-nilly out there to try to accomplish this. There's some rules that you have to follow, but they're not super difficult. And if it's a business meeting outside of our employees, then I have to have a meeting for 4 to 5 hours. It can't be watching football and high-fiving and wink, wink. We had a business meeting. No, I have to do a presentation. Like if I rented out a conference room at any facility to hold a meeting for 5 to 10 people, I could do that at my house, my residence. It doesn't have to be a lake house, doesn't have to be a beach house. It can be at your residence as well.
Got it. Awesome. So coming back still, I want to mention the lake house because there's a lot of people, again, they want to have those type of places, but that requires for them to have a lot of capital, right? So they kind of should have a lot of money for them to be able to buy these type of luxuries. So can you talk about the infinite banking strategy, which is going to help a lot of people to build that capital and that generational wealth?
Yeah, well, I'll talk a little bit about that and I'll tie it to a lake house if that's okay. I got a pretty cool story on that. So infinite banking is where we build up cash values in life insurance policies, not any life insurance policies. And you can't just go down to your local State Farm agent or Northwestern agent and expect to get what I'm talking about, okay? These are policies that are designed specifically for the highest cash value that we absolutely can get in year one. And when I say year one, meaning that I put $1 in, I'm going to get access to 60 to 80% of what I put in there that I can use. And that's going to be available to me to go do things with it. So I've been using this concept for a long time now, and I built up some cash in there. So July of 2019, I went and bought a lake house, and I needed 15% to put down on the lake house that I bought. And for round numbers, I'm going to say that was $100,000. And I used the strategy I was just talking about, the dwelling unit rental, for that lake house 10 times in between July and December, and then another like 4 times between January and when I sold it actually last month in September. Well, here's the thing is that I always talk about a lake house and people say, well, how can you do that? I was like, well, do you have a 401k? They go, sure I do. I was like, well, what do you get when you put money in a 401k? I'm like, oh, I get a tax deduction. I go, the interest on my mortgage is deductible, right? So you and I have the same sort of thing. I put, you put, $2,000 a month in your 401k. I put $2,000 a month on a mortgage payment. They're both equivalent. Now, what else do you get with your 401k? Oh, I get some appreciation. Okay, great. Well, I get appreciation in my lake house. By the way, I sold my lake house for about a 35% profit in 14 months. Thank you, COVID. People talk about COVID being bad. COVID's good, depending on where you're at, right? And so I said, well, all right, what else do you get? And they go, well, I don't get a whole lot else. I go, well, let's talk about some of the things that you don't get that I get. When you sell your 401k, what you get is to pay ordinary income tax. Depending on what tax bracket you're in, that may be in today's world 37%. Well, if I sell my lake house, which I did, I pay capital gains rates. And if I roll that capital gain into another real estate property, as we all know, I can defer that down the road. Now, when do you get access to your money? Well, I don't get access to my money until I'm 59 and a half. I go, my lake house has keys. I can walk in the door anytime I want to. And by the way, I can sell it and use it anytime I want to. I don't have any penalties in relationship to that. And so I've used my life insurance policy not only to buy this, but also to take my family down there to have memories, because most people have statements, right? Most people have a 401k and they have statements. And I'm sure you sat down with your loved ones and showed them your 401k statements and said, man, this is so good. This is so good.
Let's think of the memory.
But I got literally pictures, right? I got phones full of, shots from us being on the boat and my kids, diving off rocks and doing dumb things. And some pictures I probably shouldn't have, right? But we've had tons of fun and tons of experiences, and the same dollars that people are putting into 401ks, they could be put in a lake house. I'm not saying you should do that. You need to understand the situation, but in line of that, is opportunity, right? And here's the thing, I learned a long time ago through that concept of infinite banking. It's the financial golden rule. You know what the financial golden rule is, Martinez?
No, I'm looking forward to hearing it.
The financial golden rule is those who have the gold make the rules. So the reason why this concept infinite banking made so much sense to me is that instead of parting with my money and giving my gold to someone else and not being able to access it until I'm 59 and a half, I put it into an account just like the banks do with their money, which, by the way, Joey worked at Wells Fargo Bank. They have almost $20 billion in cash value life insurance. That's cash value life insurance. They have $20 billion. They have gold. That gold allows them to make the rules with it. And I get to make those decisions. And so that was one of those things that I thought, man, here's an opportunity that I can use my money, enjoy life with my family, find opportunities like, hey, the market's going up. I'm going to go ahead and sell when the market's up. And I did. I cashed out. I took that 100,000. I turned it into about 225,000. And I have lots of things that we're rolling that into other properties and other things, but there's ways that we can live life and enjoy it as well.
Well, and just to kind of clarify on that, Martinez, the infinite banking concept, we're giving you really high level today because it's difficult to explain over a podcast in the amount of time.
I mean,
but if it's okay,
you have a course for that. So yeah, I do understand there's if you have a course for that, that means there's more information to it.
Yeah, I just want to invite people, if they have more questions or want to learn more, we want to actually offer a free link to our community on your behalf. And it's wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/beating alpha. If you go access to our community for free, and we're going to give the Infinite Banking 101 course to your listeners for free. So we'd love for folks to go through that and make their own determination from that. And if you have questions along the way, we have coaches standing by that will be able to help implement it for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think a lot of people will say exactly the same. Thank you so much again for providing this valuable strategy, which is again, you're giving out that for free. So I appreciate it very much. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you again, there is these kind of 5 strategies that you're using, to create and build wealth without the Wall Street, which is a great thing to do. Like, what are you actually focusing on, or maybe what are you getting when it comes to your personal kind of from client feedback? Like, what does the work the most during the COVID times right now? Like, what type of strategy will be kind of the best fit for now?
Well, what I can tell you is what we're doing personally.
Sure.
We are not experts in any one of these different passive income ideas, but what we are willing to do is to essentially, Russ says it well, he says, we eat our own cooking. You know, like if we like an idea, we're going to go down that path and we're going to prove it out for ourselves. And then we're going to share our results with you, whoever is listening. Every single month, we've been doing a passive income report so that you don't just hear, you know, sometimes people just talk a lot and you don't ever see results. We're trying to be very transparent and authentic and say, man, this is what's working, this what isn't working. And so for right now, just tell you that if you ever want to listen to the whole story, you can go to our podcast and download those monthly reports. But right now, I'll just start with our first strategy is land flipping. And for those that may not know it, what we do is we buy land at a severe discount. This is kind of like the land that somebody inherited or they bought 15 years ago. They'd never use it. It's kind of like that old, you know, tire that's in your garage, and someone comes by and they say, "Hey, man, how much you want for that tire?" You know, it's like, I don't know. I mean, this thing's in my way. You're doing me a favor by taking it off of my hands. So, you know, I'll give you 50 cents for it. Okay, perfect. That's great. When we offer people to buy their land, we're buying at a severe discount because it's just something that they really don't care to have anymore. And we're making a proactive offer to them. So we're taking all the guesswork out. We turn around then and we sell it on terms at a retail price. And so that in that process, you can make anywhere from 300 to 1,000% returns because of the, I guess,
inefficiency of the market.
Yeah, the inefficiency of the market. And it's such a niche. It's not something that everybody's doing. So in just over the course of the last maybe 4 or 5 months, we've been able to take about $150,000 worth of capital and create, we're up to about $5,900 a month of passive income in that business. And so that's the thing that I'm pretty excited about. It's also one that we were able to outsource most of all the work. And so it's truly, in the sense, passive. It's like a done for you option.
Okay.
Another one I would say, you mentioned kind of in the COVID environment, which is, it's definitely changed the world, right? I think people look, my wife's a dentist and she definitely comes from an infectious disease, you know, background, and looking at how people touch their mask all day long and pretend that they're healthy because of that. You know, she would go in a room, take off a mask, you know, put on brand new gloves, but yet you see people walking around all day and using the same thing. And so she knows that this world, and she's, you know, kind of reiterated this to me, the world that we're living in is forever changed. There's 25% of the population that will never want to go in certain places that they did before because of the fear of the germs and stuff. And so as it relates to how do we use that information and apply? Well, I think about hotels, right? Hotels are stacked high and wide. And what I know, because our family being a family of 6 and my wife being kind of a germaphobe when it comes to that, is that every time we travel, she wants to stay not in a hotel anymore. She wants to stay in a short-term rental. So usually we go on Airbnb, probably the biggest platform. And so Joey and I have interviewed a bunch of people in that space and was learning how are they doing that. And there's, you know, because of there is real estate prices are still super high. As I just mentioned, selling a lake house at almost 30-something%. It was like, okay, well, can we participate in the strategy, help people who do not want to rent hotel rooms anymore, but yet we don't want to go spend top dollar to buy a place and do this. And so what we started doing is actually doing rental arbitrage, where we went in to condos and apartment complexes, signed 12 to 18-month leases with them, furnished them with designers, and then hired a team to help us manage these. And so what we have done over the last 3 or 4 months is added, now we're at 11 units, and we've created cash flows on a typical 1 or 2 bedroom that might bring in $100 to $200 a month of net cash flow after paying all the mortgages and everything. we're typically averaging somewhere between $800 to $1,600 a month net after paying all the bills. So that's been a really beneficial thing with COVID, because again, there's people out there that are looking for those places. And then obviously if we went through another quarantine, the marketplace is finding those first responders, finding those medical professionals who don't want to go home, don't want to expose their family. They have to have a place to go, but yet they don't want to go to hotel rooms either, and being able to offer our locations to them as well.
Yeah, again, that's like what's happening in industries is very crazy. Again, it disrupting the entire businesses. Like, there's a lot of businesses established. It says established 1925, gone overnight because of the COVID.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on and changing overnight right now, and it continues to change. So again, real estate is one of the things that changes a little bit. Again, what you said, you're looking towards land, investments, flipping land and investing into Airbnbs. Which again, it does make sense. As you mentioned, your wife doesn't want to go. She don't want to go to the hotels anymore, and she prefers something more private. So is that something that you give access to people, or do you train people like how to, buy these type of deals?
So what we really find ourselves doing is curating the best content. We can't be experts in every one of these things. So we find the experts, we interview them, and then we do our best to coach with them ourselves, right? Because if we're going to go into anything, we feel like you can either pay retail or you can pay off of the expense of making mistakes. And so in all these businesses, we've hired a coach that is an expert in that place. And those people reside in our community. They're accessible through that. And then you can decide if you want to work with them directly, as we have.
And I would say too, kind of this is a side thing, but one of the things that we found is that for some of our clients that we come in contact with, they have high income paying jobs or businesses, and they love those things and they don't want to leave. They're not like Joey and felt like they were in a prison, right? They really love what they do, but also the burden is there. I mean, we just got off a call with a couple. They make about $1.5 million. And do really well. Their job, for the most part, is very residual and passive, but they're involved. But the fear is, hey, look, like you said, there's businesses been around since 1925, gone. And so well, what happens if that's my business? Because we know businesses do come and go. Very few last. And so the question mark that they have is, how do I protect my lifestyle, right? Because if my business goes away, I don't want to have to move back to where I was when I left college, right? I don't want to be in that position. What am I going to do? And so we help them build passive income streams. And so we have an elite mastermind that we only have a handful of people can be involved in it. And in part of that, we have like a personal CFO that can help them execute. Because what we have found is that people can come up with great ideas. They can, like Joey said, we can curate all the content. We can even introduce them to our own, black book list, if you will, and give them the keys to the ship. But that last mile is always where implementation is where things break down. They don't actually end up doing the little thing that they needed. They could have known and could have partnered with this, the tax attorney group, but they never actually did the dwelling unit rental to get the $80,000 of benefit. They don't actually ever go set up the accounts that they needed to do in order to have the short-term rental or the land flipping or the e-commerce business, whatever it may be, and they need somebody to help them execute. So that we basically, for those people, we partner them with their own personal CFO, who's not there to make decisions for them. They're the ones that have to make decisions, but he's there to be an executor, to help them be the point person, to make them get what they want, which is really results in creating the cash flow, so they are protecting their lifestyle.
Got it. So again, I love the fact that you're, helping a lot of people at the same time, because it's a very important topic, financial education is something that our traditional education lacks off. But coming back to kind of traditional people, maybe, like you mentioned, the couple who kind of gets, 1.5 million probably gross income a year or whatever that is. Maybe some of the people who are watching, they're thinking, I'm not in that position yet because I have a lot of debt. So how is that a problem for the people who are looking to get invested and to get that income going? Is that a thing that they should get rid of in the first place, or they still can invest but while having that debt at the same time?
Well, I think the good news is that those answers exist on the side of working with one of our coaches, because everybody's situation is very different. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of financial gurus out there that give blanket advice with knowing about 1% of the story. And that is just, if we did that in the medical field, it would be malpractice, right? But in finances, people just,
okay.
they're just like, oh, it's okay. Yeah. You can just get on national TV and tell somebody to do something and it's, it's totally fine. So what we prefer to do is to set up, first of all, a discovery type call, a 15-minute call with one of our coaches. And that's where we get really clear. What are you really trying to accomplish? If we don't have that, and if you don't have that, then really you shouldn't be making any decisions financially. Like, you have nothing to hold up. You have no framework to make a decision from. And so from there, we actually have a 6-month program where we walk people through our Financial Freedom 101 course. And it's where we go through a budget, an automated budget course that is unlike any budgeting you've ever done before. We go through a tax course just to make sure that we're not allowing money to leak out of the ship, right? Because that is the easiest place to find money. We go through what debts should you pay off, and should I like defer this debt and allow that to be my entree into passive income, or is it something I need to deal with immediately? So again, those type of things are the step-by-step. You need to work with a coach and make sure that stuff is clear so that you can get to financial freedom as fast as possible. If you go it alone, you can try that, but you're probably leaving time on the table. You're going to definitely defer it without the help of somebody else. So we're happy to help folks with that coaching model. It's typically 10 people or less in a group, and they meet every 2 weeks to try to go through one of our modules and then make homework of the next 2 weeks so that they can really truly be moving forward and getting results.
That's beautiful. And I love the fact that you just put it out by saying that every person's situation is kind of unique. So there is not one answer that's available to all these situations. All we hear is like, I have a lot of debt, but there's more that are hiding behind that. And there's different strategies that you can solve that problem. So I love the fact that you cleared this out. So again, I love the fact that you're providing all these resources for people to learn how to get rid of debt, how to create income, cash flow, and how to build generational wealth. And I mean, you're doing a lot of stuff. Like, as I've been stalking you guys, for quite a while in a good way, and I've seen your journey for quite a while. And I mean, you continue to help a lot of people tremendously, especially during these times. I think it's very important. Well, kind of financial education is always important, right? But what is the legacy? And that's a question for both of you that you want to leave behind you.
Yeah, that's important to us. I mean, we have 4 steps: clarity, control, course, or path. And then the 4th one is really, it's cherishing life. It's creating that life that's worth living. And for us, that's passing down more than money, right? Money, and we've seen this in the past. We've seen families like the Vanderbilts, for instance, going back 100 years ago, you saw the Vanderbilt family was the second wealthiest family in the world. And yet 40 years after Cornelius Vanderbilt died, he had a direct descendant file for bankruptcy. And in the 80s, the family got together. There's not a millionaire in the group. And for me, what's the difference between a family like that and, say, the Rockefeller family? And it's because they didn't pass down the knowledge to go with it. And so for me, I have 4 children. My objective with my kids is to help them understand how money works and how to create it, so that if they don't ever want to have to work for someone, they don't have to. But also, if I ever gave them $1, they would know what to do with it, not just what to spend it on. And I think that's a hard part. And be honest, there's people out there that have risen to income really quickly. Maybe they created a business and it boomed, or they started a real estate portfolio and it just took off, and they're making more money than they ever had, and they didn't know what to spend it on. And so I felt like that because my family, my dad was a contractor, my mom was a school teacher. I mean, I barely even knew what the color of money was. outside of the old movie with Paul Newman, that's the only thing I knew, Color of Money. So for me, like learning how money works and being able to pass that along to my kids is super important. And for me, that is one of the big legacies I'd love to leave.
And as far as legacy, our whole process, which includes infinite banking, so it's using these high cash value life insurance policies. But what we find is our clients don't just stop with one policy on themselves. They subsequently expand their system over time to do policies on them, their spouse, business partners, their children, their grandchildren. In fact, Nelson Nash, who's the author of Becoming Your Own Banker and a direct mentor of ours, we've actually eaten lunch with him and spent many time with him here in Birmingham. He had policies on his great grandchildren because he knew the power of setting up a system like this that would self-perpetuate, because as each generation passes, there's always a cash value, a death benefit that was going to pass to the next generation. Now, if we pass the knowledge down with that death benefit, tax-free, by the way, now we've got a really powerful system to generate generational wealth. And we really want to be a part of building that into families, because over a long period of time, we've been taught to be silos, right? Like, so my grandparents, for instance, had their money, and, oh, if I have a little bit left over and it passes, great, but really you're on your own, right? Their kids were on their own as far as their own finances, and the grandkids are on their own. And what we want to do is we want to create more of a system where each generation perpetuates and grows that wealth to the next generation. And so we're actively building courses and interviewing people, and even Russ and I are going to build our own trust setup in the next quarter in Salt Lake City. We're taking a trip out there to do that so that we can also pass that on to our clients.
Here we go. So a lot of great stuff coming up also. So again, guys, I can't thank you enough today for being on the show. I mean, so much, like, with the wealth of knowledge, coming from both of you guys, and I'm sure you can share so much more in this interview. We can continue, but as you said, the best way for people who want to explore the knowledge and just more get the information more in depth, the best way is kind of to become part of the community, which of course the link for that is going to be down below. I do encourage you guys and girls who are watching this episode to get in contact with Russ and Joey, and follow them on Facebook, LinkedIn. Of course, go and subscribe to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast for these episodes that are coming out, and they're already there. So yeah, I mean, it's a great time. So guys, I wish you nothing, just a lot of success, and many more people that you can educate and change their lives. I love what you guys are working on. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Martinez. We had a great time. Appreciate you having us.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
Thank you. So before we're going to go, guys and girls, just one thing that I wanted to ask you. If you shared this episode with a friend of yours who you think those type of tips, strategies on how to create cash flow, income, generational wealth, you think will be valuable, which of course I think it will be, make sure to pass it along. Again, Russ and Joe, I appreciate you for being today on the show. And as always, I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.